On this week's episode of Comics Controllers, we talk about the Tomb Raider tie-in comic and Bryan Hitch's Real Hero. We also talk about the disappointing news of Facebook buying the Oculus Rift. All that and more on this, episode 15, Virtual Disappointment. Comics and Controllers. I'm Kyle, joined by my co-host Steven.
How's it going?
It's going pretty good, Steven. So why don't you kick us off today with our comic side of things?
We had two we wanted to look at today, and the first one was the Tomb Raider comic by Gail Simone, and it's based off of the 2013 reboot of the Tomb Raider franchise. Which I will say, if you have never played that game and you're a person who is into gaming, it's a must. I love it.
Yeah,
and
the game's really good.
Yeah, the game is really good, and it's a great entry for the character, and so I was eager to see what they did with the character in the comic side of things.
Who publishes that comic? Dark Horse?
I believe it's Dark Horse.
Okay.
Dark Horse, and it's written by Gail Simone, whom, in my opinion, is a great. She's a really good writer. Her work on Batman, I think Secret Six is really good. She's done some other stuff, or not Batman. I'm sorry, Batgirl. She's done some other stuff though.
Nightwing, I think she wrote for that.
She wrote a little bit. She has some great comics under her belt. She's done some amazing character work. And the reason Gail Simone gets some of her attention is because she's really the only truly active female writer in the big two right now.
Yeah.
In Image, you have a few more female writers, like Kelly Sue DeConnick and a few others, but in Marvel and DC, she is pretty much the only active female name in writing comics right now, which is kind of a big deal, and it kind of sucks that that's the case. But so they put her on this book, and they put Nicholas Daniel Selma, who does the art, and his art is amazing. I love the art for the book. The covers are really nice. The colors themselves inside the book are extremely well done. There's nothing wrong with the art. I don't dislike any of the character designs or anything. It's a little, plain in some areas with a little bit of lack of detail, but it fits. It works with the rest of the art style. So I enjoy that aspect of it.
So you're talking about colors. He didn't do the coloring though. He only did the pencil work on it. Right, I had to double check.
He did pen and ink, yeah.
Actually, he didn't even ink. Somebody else inked, but he was.
Oh, really?
He drew, yeah.
Yeah.
So, what did you think of the actual story in the comic?
Well, here's the thing. So, I was playing the Tomb Raider game when I read this the first time. I hadn't finished the game, and thankfully it didn't spoil anything. But I had to. I was supposed to review it, and it was a review that never actually came out. Funny enough. But I'm reading it, and I thought, oh, this is, I like this. This is nice. It adds more to the story, because it picks up just a few months after the initial, the game.
Uh-huh.
And I liked what they were doing with it. And then I finished the game, and I decided, issue 2 of the comic had just come out, and I decided to go back and reread the first issue with kind of a newer perspective now that I had finished the game. And I have to say that I actually enjoyed it less on the second read through.
Okay.
I didn't appreciate the comic as kind of the newness as much. It had worn off. Sometimes I'll admit when a writer I really like is writing a comic, it kind of has that extra tinge of, oh, this is really good. But through with a second read through, I definitely saw a few more of the cracks. I'll just put it that way. And it was less entertaining the second time through.
Well, the fact that you were able to read it 2 times surprises me, because I had to fight to read it just once, because I thought it was so bad. I thought it was
really
horrible. Yeah, I couldn't. So, it is obviously something that Dark Horse Comics bought the rights to do so they could make money off of something that was popular.
It seems like that, yeah.
They probably went to Gail Simone because she's a fairly well-known writer. And they got her to write it.
You also probably want to put a female writer on something in video games that's considered to be one of your strongest, longer-lasting female characters.
Possibly. I mean, that might have been part of it, or maybe she showed a lot of interest in it, or something like that. But I just felt that it was one of these comics that you would see, like, them passing out for free somewhere just because it ties into the movie or whatever you've just done. Like, I just got out of the movies, and I'm a little kid. Here's this comic tie-in. Maybe we can sucker you into buying some of these things that go along with it to make more money. Yeah,
I get what you're saying. I've received plenty of those comics in my lifetime.
Yeah, and I thought this was a lot like that. Like, the story was just, I don't know, it just wasn't good. It was boring, and it was just kind of what the fuck a lot of times. Pardon my language there. But I don't know. And I'll say this, too. I'm not a Gail Simone fan. I think she's overhyped.
Really?
Yeah, no, I think she's very overhyped.
I think she's hyped. I don't think she's overhyped.
Oh, no, I do. I mean, she's had some stuff that wasn't bad, but she's never written anything that I read, and I was just like, wow, that was amazing. This goes on. This is a book that I would recommend to other people.
You should really try Secret Six.
Fans. I did. I read Secret Six when it came out. Yeah.
I loved it.
I didn't. I thought it was pretty bad. But the thing is, I liked where it came from. The original Secret Six stuff, that was from the event. I don't remember. There's so many events. It's hard.
Yeah, I can't. I know what you're talking about, but I actually can't remember it.
That event, I love that stuff, and I started reading the series that came afterwards, and I was just like, ooh, this is not good.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, she's obviously kind of a fangirl. You can tell in her writing of certain characters, and that's not bad. I mean, it could be a good thing, but I just don't think she's as great a writer as people hype her up to be.
I loved her Batgirl.
I haven't read that
series, and I liked Secret Six, but I've only read the first trade of Secret Six.
Yeah, see, I think I read like into what would have been the second trade and was kind of just done with it. The Batgirl I have heard's good, but I haven't read it.
Yeah,
they have her write a lot of the same characters oftentimes though, because I feel it's the fangirl side of it. Like Barbara Gordon's a character she writes a lot, and so is Dick Grayson. Because didn't she get her start doing like fanfic or something, like Dick Grayson fanfic?
I don't know about that. I would have to actually look that up.
I think she did. I think that's kind of how she came into the limelight because of other stuff with comics. Like, she's a big proponent of women in comics being treated, not being treated like these sex symbols and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I want to say that she used to write fanfic, and a lot of it was Nightwing.
Yeah.
So I could be incorrect, but I'm pretty sure that's the case.
When they relaunched Gen 13, she was the writer, and her big thing was that that the comic book of Gen 13 was largely about sex, not about the act of sex, but it was a sexualized comic, and she wanted to keep that, but not make it the way it was in the original, where it was just nothing but, And I think she did a really good job of keeping the comic book sexy without making it, Fairchild wasn't like in ripped clothes every 3 pages,
That's 90s too, though. That's very 90s.
And that was very 90s, and Image, was all about the artist at first, and, that was one of their attractions was, hey, we're going to have all these scantily clad women. But she did, in my opinion, she did a really good job. And that's where I first actually learned about Gail Simone, was when she did the relaunch of Gen 13. Because I thought the writing, I thought the writing on that was, I mean, I don't know, it's hard to compare because the original, like we said, the original Gen 13 was early 90s or mid 90s, and the writing was kind of hokey, but good. It was a fun hokey. in the original, and so hers was still a little bit hokey, but I think it was because she was trying to mimic some of that.
You know, and I think some of the stuff too, thinking about the Gen 13 and her writing in general, is that the Gen 13 comics started off not too bad. The newer one, not the original necessarily, but the newer one started off not too bad. But as time goes on, I think her writing tends to, I don't know, I think she tends to lose some of what she's doing with comics and characters. And so it seems like a lot of her stuff when it first starts out is really good, and then just kind of dies off.
Yeah. I liked the new Gen 13. I mean, I read it up to the end, so I read the whole series. But
yeah, I did too. I read it all the way through Worldstorm and all that.
Yeah. But there were a couple points, like the story arc where they were in New York. It was just kind of like, okay, I don't even know if they know what they're really doing. And Gail Simone didn't write it all the way through. I think someone else eventually took over.
That's true. I think though it started like it just, I don't know. I didn't really. I think that it didn't really go much, and I think it was the same way with the Secret Six stuff. Like it started off not bad, but I think it kind of just bleh with the quickness.
And I hate to say this too, but for those who don't know, there was a controversy for a little while where she kind of got fired from Batgirl, and basically there was no reasoning. Like she didn't post the email. The email got leaked, and it was posted by a website, and there wasn't even really a reason in the email for why they were letting her go. And so, you know, she got hired back, obviously, pretty quickly because there was an uproar on the internet. And I think a lot of people will side with Gail Simone because it really looks like that she has a lot of heat on her for being a prominent female writer, the prominent female writer for DC. And there was a lot of like stuff surrounding that issue that was that never came to light.
What kind of heat does she have on her?
Well, that's what I'm saying. None of that has ever really come to light, and it's hard to say like exactly what DC is doing or what anyone is doing. But do you remember when she got fired from Batgirl? Do you remember reading about that?
No, okay. I think I wasn't really paying attention to comics at that time.
Here's the thing: like Batgirl had like a really small dip in sales from what I recall of reading it. It had a dip in the sales, but at the time, all those new 52 books were doing like extremely well.
Yeah, and
basically, she announced on Twitter, she's like, "Hey, I'm not going to be writing Batgirl anymore," and everybody, was kind of like, "Oh, that really sucks. Why? Are you moving to something else or whatever?" And then she, like I said, she didn't say it. It came out through other websites and stuff like that. And I guess maybe heat's the wrong word, but a lot of stuff that they revealed in that made it look like that, either someone was after her job or they wanted to move her because they thought that she was the reason the comic had taken the dip in sales, but they didn't want to call her out on that,
Yeah, I mean, I can't say, because I never, like I said, I didn't read Batgirl, but I would actually say it's maybe the opposite. Not that she has heat on her, but I think she gets away with a lot more in comics. Not saying she's writing stuff like, whoa, that's risque, but she could be bad on a comic longer than other writers could, because she has a fan base that's based around her just being a female.
Yeah.
Some people just read her stuff because it's female, and people are afraid to do stuff. The Batgirl thing's a great example. She got unfired. So. She
did, but again, I think.
But you have to, as you also have to ask, well, what caused the dip in sales? I mean,
right.
It probably was because there's all these new 52 comics, and people have to choose what they're going to and not going to read. But Did the story dip? Did the story get worse during that time? Maybe.
I've read up through the point, because there's like 2 issues, I think, where she's not the writer.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't think it did. But that's me, so.
Yeah.
The other thing that I'll say is that I'm not disagreeing with you. I think there could be kind of that opposite effect, that she could get away with a lot more. But also, it just, I don't know. It seemed really weird. It seemed like something fishy. And like I said, as far as I know, we've never figured out exactly what all went on with that.
Yeah. But I don't know. Getting back to the actual Tomb Raider comic,
getting back to Tomb Raider.
With her writing it seems that this is just some kind of quick money maker tie-in to the series so they can make some money. And they probably just got her to write it, and she's probably a fan of the game, and so she was willing to. But I don't know if it's one of those, sometimes they come to you like, hey, this is the story we want you to do. Just do it. And other times it's like, hey, would you be willing to do a story with this character? Yeah, we'll come up with your own.
Yeah. Here's the other thing, and anyone who has played the Tomb Raider games for a while knows that there's two sides to Tomb Raider. There's Lara Croft, archaeologist, running around shooting people and tigers and dinosaurs and shit, right?
Yeah.
There's also the supernatural side, and the comic book seems to be focused a lot more on the supernatural aspects of the comic, or of the story. So I think that's something that people should know before getting into the comic, is if you're not as big of a fan of the supernatural aspects of the items that Lara finds, and a lot of the game, the last boss usually ends up being more of a kind of a supernatural creature. If you're not as into that as some, then this may not be the right thing for you.
And I'll just put this out there. That's not why I didn't like it. I didn't like it because I thought it was a terrible story that was forced with bad character development and their interaction. I just felt it was really fake and just bad.
Right.
Yeah. But that's just me. I'm hating on it just to hate on it. It seems like.
Right.
So let's talk about the other one I wanted to hate on.
Right. Well, this one I didn't actually like as much. I would actually say I like Tomb Raider more than this one, so we may both be hating on it. But it's Real Heroes, and it was created, written, and drawn by Brian Hitch. And Brian Hitch has had some good stuff under his belt. He's been in the business for a while. He's done, he's primarily an artist, but he's done other stuff within the industry, obviously. A lot of people like to praise him for his work on Fantastic Four and a few other books that he not only
he actually
drew,
even worked on the Wildstorm Stormwatch, which was part
of
the relaunch from that stuff that Gail Simone's Gen 13 was too.
He did, and a lot of those he co-wrote, I believe.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, I think his major stuff's been like the Authority and the Ultimates and stuff like that.
And I know for the Authority, and I want to say for a few others, he also helped create the actual characters for those books. So that's he does, like I said, he's got his hand in everything a little bit. Real Heroes is basically a story that is kind of like the Avengers. That's the best way I can describe it. You have a group of actors who play these characters on TV or on in the movies, and they all have superpowers. They're characters. And the book starts out with them at the premiere for their second movie. They're called The Olympians, so the movie is called The Olympians 2 Devastation or something like that.
Yeah, some really bad comic book movie title.
Right. And I'm sorry, the comic book itself actually starts with 9/11, which I thought was a really odd choice, but it ties into why one of the actors wants to be a superhero on screen so bad, because his dad died. His dad was a firefighter and died rescuing people in 9/11. So, that ties back to the character motivation and all that. But it just seemed like an odd choice to start there.
Yeah, I didn't know where they were going with it.
Yeah. So, anyway, the point is that they get done with the movie premiere, and during the movie premiere, you're seeing a little snippet for each of the actors and their corresponding characters in the movie. And it's kind of neat because some of the actors are dealing with debt. Some of them are dealing with just not wanting to do the movie anymore. Some of them are dealing with doing blow off a hooker's ass in the bathroom.
Yeah. Well, it just kind of shows, it's just basically going around and showing you what kind of people the actors are and how they're nothing like their characters.
It's characterizations. They want you to see that all these characters are a little bit different, enough to where you should care about each one for different reasons,
Yep.
And I think it sort of works and sort of doesn't work. That there were certain characters that stood out more to me. But to be honest, in the end, I don't think I can tell you any of their names.
Oh, I know I couldn't.
Yeah. But, so the plot, basically, and giant spoiler warning here, the plot basically is that after the movie, they go out to do the presser stuff, which is, normal. and there's this giant robot, which is just like one of the ones from the movies, and they think it's a big PR stunt. Well, it turns out the PR robot was stuck on the freeway, and this one is real, and it that was my only part I thought was really funny. It obliterates the reporter.
Yeah.
And so the actors and actresses are all wearing a piece of the reporter as they flee. And,
and it basically goes on a killing spree.
Yeah, it goes on a killing spree and all that. And this guy randomly shows up, and that seemed odd. Like, that was very jarring for me. It's like, where the hell did this guy come from? And
the whole comic's like that.
Yeah. So he shows up, and he's like, hey, let me take you to your cars. They're out back. And, they believe him and follow him. And he uses a key card to somehow send them to another world where, dun dun dun, the movie that they portray in is actually the reality. The movie that they portray these characters in is actually the reality. So in this world, there really are Olympians. They really did have powers, and they've all died. And so now this guy has called these actors in to play to be the Olympians.
Yeah.
And they didn't say whether or not they're going to have powers in that world, or if they're going to do stuff to give them synthetic powers, or who knows what the hell.
Yeah, so plot holes extraordinaire. It's pretty bad. This comic was painful for me to read for multiple reasons. So first off, there's like 7 main characters in this comic, and they're trying to tell you something about all 7 of them in like 32 pages. It's confusing. It's very confusing. It's like, who is this guy? I don't know any of these people. All these people are nobodies to me. I don't know who any of them are. And you're suddenly just bombarding me with not just their normal personality, but their on-screen personality. So I'm technically learning about 14 different people in a span of 32 pages where there's actually a plot going on too.
And what was great about that is in my review that I did for Culture Mass, I tried to name all the characters and try to give some opinions, but I had to scrap that part because one of the things is the guy in the wheelchair is never named. You never know his superhero persona name.
Yeah, that's true.
And I was like, I don't know if that's an oversight but that really screws with what I was trying to do.
Yeah, it's like it's really just weird the way it's done. And there's characters, like you said, the ones that are never named but are in there who are obviously main characters because they're in like almost every panel.
Right.
But they never name them, and you never get any interaction with them or anything like that.
Or there were a couple times that the character's only named once in the entire comic, so I had to go searching through it. I basically read the comic twice because I reread so much of it, looking for names and important phrases.
That was one of my major problems. Was this just so much going on between basically 14 something characters in 32 pages that you can't keep up with it all, and then. The problem then comes is that because they're trying to do so much, and comics are visual media, truthfully, you're reading, but a lot of it's told through pictures and images. You can't do stories for 14 people in 32 pages with all images, so there's a lot of text and like thought bubbles and word bubbles and stuff, so half of some of the pages are nothing but word bubbles. So it's,
right.
Why don't you just write a short story? That's really what you did. That's what you wanted to do. I think it would have been easier.
Yeah. I think my biggest problem with it is I knew almost nothing about this book. Like, Image put a lot of advertisements out. They've been talking this book up for a while. But mostly what they've been...
I don't know why.
I mean...
Probably because we got Brian Hitch on it.
It's Brian Hitch. And that's what I was going to say. Like, if you notice, most of it is like, hey, Brian Hitch and Real Heroes. A lot of it was, I think, they were like, oh... I like Brian Hitch's art. The art in the book is, I agree it's not his best art, but I like the art. My biggest problem with this entire book is that knowing almost nothing about it, reading just the beginning and realizing where it was going.
You still know nothing about it.
Well, I knew nothing about parts that I wanted to know more about, but I was easily able to tell where the story was going.
Yeah.
And that was one of my biggest problems, and I talked about this in my review. It was the most predictable ending to that story, and it was just from what little bit I knew going into it and getting that first part down, I was like, well, this hopefully will not be what happens, but this is where it will probably go, and then it went there.
Yep.
And I just think there was so much lost potential that they could have done so much more with that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just It's really not a good comic. There's really no other way around it. The story's not good. Character development's terrible. The art's not horrendous, but it is nowhere near his best work. I mean, it's probably in the lower end of it, truthfully.
See, I don't know if I agree with that. I'm not saying I wouldn't say it's the lower end. I'd say it's the mid-range. It's his mid-range art. And Brian
what's his worst comic?
Because
I can name great comics.
Yeah.
Like Authority and Ultimates, his art in those are amazing.
Yeah.
But I can't think of too many other ones where it's not that great. And it might not be that good in this because he's having to do writing and drawing.
I guess what I'm doing is comparing it to other art and not necessarily comparing it just in his line.
Yeah, I'm talking about
art.
In his line. In his line of art, it's probably the worst.
Yeah, judging it just on his art alone, yeah, I'd say it might be lower end.
But still, compared to other artists, I agree with that. It's still probably mid. Yeah.
On Brian Hitch's worst day, he's still better than a lot of comic book artists out there.
Oh yeah, easily. There's some comics I look at the art and I'm just like, I could have done this, and I can't draw.
Right.
So, no, I agree. It's better than most other art, but it's probably one of his worst. Yeah. And some of that could have also been the coloring and the inking too, because the coloring was kind of weird in places.
Yeah, I don't know. The
it just seems odd that Image would put as much publicity into it as they did for this comic.
Yeah, the detail on some of the faces at times does look a little odd. Like, it was almost like he was trying a different style or, wanted it to look a certain way, and it just didn't translate well.
Or maybe he realized he had so many characters coming at you so fast that he tried to make them all look different in some way, and he just really couldn't pull it off without them looking derpy.
Yeah. I know you said you probably wouldn't read issue 2. I'll probably read... I'll give issue 2 a chance, but if issue 2 doesn't do something for me, I'm probably done with that book.
So, this is one of the things with comics like this. So, people always talk about, like, oh, I don't have money to buy all these comics. That's why I don't try new ones. I'm not saying that I have bags of money to throw at this, but to me, reading a comic is more of a time investment, because if you start one that's good, you want to keep reading it. And so now you're having to invest the time into reading all the issues. So, like I started reading Saga, and I love Saga, so I want to read all of it. That's a time investment. In something like this, I already feel like I wasted my time reading the first issue. I'm not putting any time into reading the next one. I wouldn't even put time into somebody telling me about the next issue because I don't really care because the story was so bad. It's like Walking Dead. Not the comic. The comic is amazing, but the show. The first season to me was so bad that I don't care how good the later seasons got. I was done with it, and I don't want to hear about it from anybody either.
Well, it sounds like both of the comics for this week were kind of a wash, but hopefully something better will come out next week.
Yeah, hopefully so. If you have any recommendations on stuff that you think we should read or talk about on air, you should email us and let us know too, because we're always looking for stuff. And it doesn't have to be anything new. It could be something old. There's old stuff out there that's still amazing. That's amazingly good or amazingly bad. So sometimes the really bad ones are really worth talking about because you kind of can discuss problems, or they can be funny.
Yeah, definitely.
But moving into the video game side of things this week, so we were going to talk about a game in particular, but then something happened that has not happened for a while. There's actually comics, or actually video game related news that kind of occurred.
That's true. We had a dead spell.
Yeah, which is crazy considering it was like GDC last week, the Game Developers Conference. We expected a lot of news to come out of it, but anything that came out was just kind of, okay.
For those that don't know, January and February are usually considered the dead period for gaming, for games specifically. But with the 2 new consoles out and, like you said, GDC and everything coming out, we thought there'd be something.
Yeah, and there wasn't until this week when it was announced that Facebook was going to purchase Oculus Rift. Now, for people who don't know what Oculus Rift is, because we're going to assume you already know what Facebook is. Oculus Rift is a virtual reality piece of hardware that you wear on your face, and it allows you to play games, that are developed for it, so you can look around and feel like you're fully immersed within the game. It was a Kickstarter that was done to fund it, and a lot of people put a lot of money in it, and it's they've produced. There's actually hardware, and I've seen people who've played it and watched it, and people who've dealt with it, and everybody who has dealt with it says, "Wow, this is amazing."
Yeah, they're on version 2 of their dev kits now, right?
Yeah, and people were really excited about that. But with the news this week that Facebook purchased them for $2 billion, and I think it was like 400 was in cash, 400 million was in cash, and the other 1.6 billion was in Facebook stock, with like an option for 300 million if they're able to meet certain target goals with the Oculus. Gamers pretty much lost it, because they don't want Facebook to have a part of this. And I don't really blame people for getting upset about it, because Oculus is supposed to be this kind of advanced in video game technology. It's supposed to maybe take certain aspects of video games to the next level. And Facebook comes in, and the first thing they say is they see it as a social platform.
Yeah.
And I think as a gamer, I think most of us can agree that I'm tired of social in games. I don't need an update every 5 seconds telling me what my friends are playing. If I wanted to know what they were playing, I would ask them. Yeah. You know? And there were a lot of people that got upset. Like, semi-famous people got upset about this. Like, Notch, who created Minecraft, he wrote a huge blog post about it.
Yeah. Well, you know, from what I remember, he was developing a version of Minecraft that would specifically work with the Oculus Rift.
Yeah, he was. And he said, not anymore. He's not.
Right.
He's done with it. He actually even gave them $10,000 in their Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Because he felt so heavily about it. And he still owed, because you know when you do a Kickstarter, there's different goals. He still owed a trip to their home office to meet with John Carmack about it, because that's how much he had donated. He said now he doesn't care. He doesn't want to talk to him. But his exact quote from his blog post is that, "I did not chip in $10,000 to seed a first investment round to the build value for a Facebook acquisition."
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people they all agree, you know.
And didn't he say Facebook creeps him out?
Yeah, he says they creep him out.
And I can't, it's hard to argue that.
Oh, it is hard to argue that. I mean, because all Facebook is looking for, what really creeps, I don't think it's necessarily, when he says it creeps him out, I don't think it's necessarily what we were expecting, which is they're all pervasive and they have all this knowledge and information about you. I think it's more of like their recent purchases. Like, they just are throwing money at things. And they're all just random stuff. Like, they bought Instagram. Okay, I can kind of understand that. That kind of links back to social and Facebook. Then they bought WhatsApp, which is some kind of, like, I guess it's like a messaging service through phones and stuff.
Yeah, I don't know if this is still the case, but the original version of WhatsApp was supposed to be, hey, we don't want to spend money on text messages, so you use this through your phone to keep in touch with your friends. I've never tried it, but I've read some stuff on it.
Yeah, and so they purchased that, and each one of these have been purchased for a crazy amount of money. It's not like, you know, a couple million. These are like in the billions, all these purchases. And now this. And what it looks a lot like Facebook's doing is you're just buying up hot technologies to own. And when they do that, it gives them leverage, because I'm sure that Oculus owns several patents on virtual reality technology, and that gives Facebook patents now that they can argue in court over things if they do stuff with it.
Yeah. Also, it seems like everything that they've really bought so far is something that they could either incorporate into the Facebook or some other form of something they own, you know, to make theirs bigger and better. But also, it seems like they're keeping some stuff off of the market. Now they're, you know, like with WhatsApp, they're not going to get rid of WhatsApp, but one of their big things for the mobile part of Facebook is the Messenger. Mm-hmm. And so now, you know, it's like, hey, we're buying up the competition, you know, stuff that could easily be a challenge to what we have.
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely. And I think there are certain aspects of them purchasing Oculus that goes along with that. You know, one example is from GDC, we heard about Sony's Morpheus, which is their virtual reality.
Right. And that's interesting.
Yeah, there's that. And several developers who were there, I remember them all tweeting saying that it looked like virtual reality was actually a major part of this GDC conference that just happened. And I'm sure that the Oculus Facebook thing's been in the works for a while, but it would make sense that if they saw this and knew this was coming, that there's a big move to VR inside of the gaming realm, that they would try to purchase this to give them some leverage and some leg up. It could also come down to maybe they're trying to do something that gives them some kind of benefit against Google Glass, because although Google Glass isn't necessarily virtual reality, it does have an augmented reality function to it, which the two are very similar. So maybe they're trying to do something like that, and they want to have some kind of, patent leverage or the ability to do it further.
Right, and I could totally see that,
because they don't have a big basis in hardware. I think they've done a phone, which was garbage and didn't do anything. So this is another venture for Facebook that they've never done, which is owning an actual hardware creator.
That is true, and I'm not going to say, I'm looking forward to what they do with that, but I think it might be interesting, not for the Oculus Rift, because I think this is horrible. This is bad that they bought the Oculus Rift, but seeing what Facebook does with hardware might be interesting from a pure outside perspective looking in.
Yeah, and this kind of brings up a thing too with a lot of developers and people who get into Kickstarters, that you need to realize that doing a Kickstarter is not the same as investing in a company.
Right.
You're not basically going to them and it's like, hey, I really like what you're doing. I'm going to give you $10,000 to invest in your company as a seed for an investment or something. And when it happens, I'll get something in return. No, you're giving them money and they're promising something for you. And I think a lot of people, including Notch, are having a hard time realizing that yes, you did give them $10,000, but that doesn't mean that they owe you anything other than what they promised you.
Right.
You don't own any part of the company. You don't have stock in it. Now, if they'd have said $10,000 in stock, that's a different story. But they didn't.
This is just another example, and we've discussed this before. I think we've even discussed this on the podcast. This is another example of people are going to be a lot more skeptical about Kickstarter. This is kind of a kick in the pants to show one other thing, that can really happen. Kickstarter was already had its pitfalls and dangers, but this is just another, like Notch. What if you really put your money, even if it's not $10,000, if you really put some money behind something, and then suddenly it's bought up by a company that you despise or that won't do what the original intention for the item was.
Exactly. And I mean, I've seen stuff. One of them was John Carmack, which is one, he's famous in video games, and he was one of the ones behind the Oculus Rift, and he's a little quote from him saying in the beginning, the Oculus Rift is about video games, and it's taking him to the next level, and this type of stuff. And basically, right after Facebook announced their purchase, Oculus has said nothing. They've been pretty quiet, because I think they knew there was going to be some blowback on it, Right. But Facebook is like, we see Oculus is a social platform, and it's the next step in social, blah, 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 blah. Nothing about gaming.
Yeah.
So it's what's happened? I mean, was it about gaming until they came to you with $2 billion, and now it's not about gaming because it was about $2 billion instead? And I'm not faulting them. $2 billion, I'd probably take it too.
That's $2 billion, yeah.
Yeah, but still, it's a principle. If that was what your principle was, then why did it suddenly change with this platform? And what are they going to do with it? Is it going to become a virtual reality Facebook machine so I can play Farmville in virtual reality?
I am afraid.
You can bombard me with ads in virtual reality?
Right. Here's the thing. One of the biggest things right now, and this isn't a new thing, it's just still really big, is customizing ads to people. Mm-hmm. And I'm afraid that's what they see this as.
Oh, I'm sure they do. I'm sure that's part of their thought process, is how they can customize ads to people through this based on, like, oh, we see they're playing these games, well, we can try to send them more games like this, things along those lines. Like, I think I sent Steven a video earlier somebody had made of the Facebook Oculus Rift, and it's like somebody's playing a game, and in the middle of running up to shoot somebody, a Facebook message pops up, blocks him, and he gets killed, and then he has to wait 1 minute to respawn. But he could buy special coins that let him respawn faster. And then they start sending him ads about other games similar to this, like Farmville and things. There's nothing like the first-person shooter he's playing.
Right. Yeah.
And the entire time he's being bombarded with more Facebook garbage ads that don't have anything to do with anything that you care about. So, let's just hope that that's not what it's going to be, though.
I don't know. I always try to be a little bit positive in situations like this. You know, like when Disney bought Marvel and Star Wars and other stuff like that. You always try to be a little bit positive, but first of all, Facebook does not have as much of my... it's not as easy to be positive with Facebook as it is with other companies.
Yeah, it's completely different. I mean, the Marvel thing and the DC and Star Wars thing, I wasn't really negative. I thought it was probably a good thing about it. But this, the first moment I heard this, I was one of the naysayers. I was like, doomed is the Oculus Rift. It is forever forsaken from me. Nothing to do with it.
That may be a little overdramatic.
I posted it on Facebook so everybody could see it too.
Yeah. But the thing is that part of my problem was I was already skeptical about the Oculus Rift. I love the idea. I liked what I had seen, but you know there were still doubts in my mind. And this just now pretty much I'm not going to say I'm writing it off, but it's pretty much written off. You know?
Well, a lot of developers have done that. You know, a lot of developers are like, I'm done with that thing, and they're mad because they paid for developers kits, and now they're like, well, I don't want anything to do with it. You know, Minecraft was one. Mojang did that. They're like, we're not going to touch it, and now other ones too, even smaller ones, are just like, it's not worth the hassle.
Yeah, and you know what? Facebook owning it is going to scare companies off who may have, you know, beforehand, maybe weren't considering it yet. But maybe beforehand considered it had it not had the Facebook name attached to it.
Yep, there's a lot of people that talked about that too. Like, I'm no longer interested in it. Not in developers and consumers. People like, I don't want a $300 virtual reality ad machine on my face. You know, I don't need that.
And not to play devil's advocate, but maybe this is the exact opposite of what we should be doing, because I think two things are going to happen. One, by this happening with Facebook and Oculus Rift, we're basically trashing the Oculus Rift. If everybody thinks the same way that we do, and the same that Notch and all of them do, then basically the Oculus Rift is going to be pretty much dead in the water.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to push everybody towards the new stuff, like we discussed, the Morpheus that, you know, Sony's coming out with. The other thing is, too, is a lot of people have been talking up virtual reality gaming and stuff like this, you know, since GDC. And maybe it's time, you know, I'm not saying that we should embrace it because more people are, you know, talking about it, because so far in the history of gaming, we've been pretty much burned by virtual reality. There's really not been a good virtual reality or any type of augmented reality or anything like that. But if this really is the future, and we, you know, are pushing Oculus Rift to the side now just because of the Facebook thing, we might actually be hurting ourselves in the long run. We may be postponing that, is what I'm saying.
Well, and in Facebook's defense, these other products that they have purchased, like Instagram and WhatsApp and now the Oculus Rift, for those other two, after they purchased them, it's not like they suddenly came in, took over, and changed their entire thing. They left them to basically run as independent companies. And in fact, they have done very well since then, because now they have Facebook seed money behind it. Maybe the same thing will happen with the Oculus. My concern is that the Oculus's original concept was basically something to revolutionize gaming.
Yeah.
But that is not the concept that Facebook has for it. They see it as a social platform, and it's not. I don't know why. I mean, I know why, because that's Facebook's platform is social.
Right.
But I think that's what the big problem is going to be. And even Facebook investors, it hit, like, after that announcement was made, they had a dip in stock.
Right, yeah.
Not a huge dip, but it was a dip in after-hours trading, because people were like, what is this? Because that's not what your thing is. You're branching out. That happens, you know, when Google was buying stuff back in the day that had nothing to do with search engines, they would lose stock value afterwards. Now it's not really surprising when Google buys something that no one understands why are they buying it. Or Apple, they did the same thing.
Yeah.
So we'll have to wait and see. But
Yeah.
there's a big fallout from it already. A lot of people don't want to touch it because of the Facebook thing, and it's, I think, because of what Notch said. Facebook creeps people out, and Mark Zuckerberg is a creepy dude. He has said things in the past about people's information that just makes it where you're like, wow, do I want to use Facebook?
Yeah. I'll be one of the first ones to admit I'm on Facebook all the time pretty much, and it still kind of creeps me out a little bit.
Yeah, something with it creeped me out the other day. I don't have any photos of me really on there. I think there's one or two, but they're not tagged.
Yeah.
Somebody took a picture of me, and Facebook was able to auto tag me in that picture.
Yeah, that's a little creepy.
I was like, I don't like that. Untag me now. I don't want that. So, there's that. And maybe that's part of what the Oculus Rift will do. Maybe it will, when you're wearing it and you're looking at people, maybe it will record everybody's face in VR, so then it can even better tag you in photos on Facebook and sell you ads in 3D. I can only imagine. They kind of tie this back to comics, actually. So there's an old one written by Warren Ellis called Transmetropolitan. It's probably one of my favorite series.
Yeah.
It's this futuristic story, but there are 3D ads in that, and at one point, he has this mental breakdown because his mind's been bombed with ads. So whenever he goes to sleep, he hears ads and sees ads. So it's the motorcycle outside, sorry.
Yeah.
But he hears and sees ads that are being sold to him until it wears off. I'm kind of imagining that's the stuff that Facebook wants, is so they can constantly bombarding you with ads, and that something like the Oculus is just another system for it. They make their own little 3D glasses like Google Glass, and now they can put ads in the corner of your vision constantly.
Yeah, and I mean it just almost seems like it's not a if, it's a when.
Yeah, that's probably the best and saddest way of putting it. It's not an if, it's a when. So on that depressing note, I
will say this again, just to play Mr. Positive for just a second. You should still, if you haven't, you can find it all over YouTube. There are videos of people playing different games with the Oculus Rift. I watched a really long one on someone playing Team Fortress 2 not too long ago, and
my favorite is
it's
when
worth
you get
checking out.
Old people who don't do anything with video games to sit down and put on an Oculus Rift and just go on a roller coaster ride. And they're just amazed, they're just completely in shock. You see them almost falling over because they're moving and stuff.
Right.
And people have to keep them from tripping. So
you
should check out videos of that.
One of my favorite moments ever was one Christmas when the Wii was still pretty new. I took it home to let my mom and stepdad try it, and that was hilarious. You want to talk about people who pretty much have never played a video game in their life trying to play the Wii. That was a priceless moment.
Nice. All right, guys. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for this week's episode of Comics and Controllers. So if you want to send us any stories to talk about, or suggest any comics to read or video games to play, you can send those suggestions to us at comicsandcontrollers@gmail.com. And if you want to follow me, you can check me out on Twitter at ZombieJesus here. Where can they check you out, Steven?
Just my name, Stephen Wilds, on Twitter.
All right. So there you go. So until next time, I'm Kyle.
I'm Steven.
You guys have a good one.